Hello again. I'll start off this recounting of the last four episodes of Season 1. I think it's a weird way that they divide them. If you look on Amazon and you try to buy them, then Season 1 actually ends earlier than it does according to the Wikipedia. But I'm going by the Wikipedia. And the last four episodes of Season 1 are 17 through 20. And um, here's a thing that, again, like so many things, I might have noticed earlier, and I kind of maybe noticed while I was rereading the books, but I really noticed it now. And that is the kid Yeerks tend to be higher ranking than the uh, than the adult Yeerks. And the reason that this came clear here is in the first of these episodes, number 17, which is called Not My Problem. And according to Wikipedia, is not based on, but has similarities to the plot of Megamorphs back to before, and I'll have more on that in a second too. Jake is the high-ranking Yeerk that I think Tom is in the main timeline. In this alternate timeline, Jake is that Yeerk. And, again, like I mentioned before, the actors playing the kids here are adults playing kids. They are, I think the youngest of them were 17 or 18. So not adults, but essentially adults. But Tom, I don't know how old the actor was, but seemed more adult, more toward adult than kid, and so him bossing Principal Chapman around didn't ring as weird as Sean Ashmore's Jake doing it, and so I thought and I thought, why is this? Why would the Yeerks? And I think it's probably similar in the book. I think Tom is a higher ranking Yeerk than Principal Chapman in the book. He's certainly not as put upon by Visser 3 as Principal Chapman is. But I thought, why would the Yeerks do this? And the conclusion that I came to was the Yeerks wouldn't necessarily, but the book is for kids, and the TV show is for kids, and it's fun for kids to see kids bossing around adults. And one of the ways to do that is to make them not human. Give them some other... because in the realistic human scenario, the adults boss around the kids. We may be changing that in our culture currently, but at least in the late 90s, and for the most part, adults boss around the kids. But you want to get kids into your book, you show the kids bossing around the adults. And so that's just something, again, that it was always there. I might have noticed it earlier to varying degrees. I definitely noticed it this time around. As for Not My Problem, getting to my notes of the episodes in order, the note on Wikipedia says, I'll read it specifically, it says, shares similarities to Megamorphs Back to Before, although the book came out after the episode. The book came out about a year after the episode, and this started to confuse me, and more of these episodes are saying based on this, and I'll have more about that later based on that, but shares similarities to Megamorphs Back to Before. That's because it's an alternate timeline book, and there are at least 2 alternate timeline books in the book series, and briefly I'll just say it's weird that they're back-to-back, that you have Megamorphs Back to Before, which is the Krayak tempting... hold on, I looked it up so that I'd be sure. Yes, in Back to Before, Krayak sends the Droid to get Jake to say, no, I don't want to do this anymore. And then in the other one, which is the Familiar, Jake, it's not a flashback to we're not going to go through the construction site. It's a flash forward to if we hadn't gone through the construction site, and now the Yeerks have taken over, and it's a dystopian thing, and it's the better of the 2 by far. I think it's more interesting, and it doesn't have to jump through as many hoops. And then at the end, it's not Krayak or Elamist, it's unidentified voices that are neither male nor female, and unless those voices belong to the beings at the very end of the series, that are the new villains or whatever. Um, it's never addressed, and it never comes back, at least not to my knowledge. If you know where it comes back, other than at the very end, uh, leave a comment, because that's something that I missed. I'm curious. But this alternate timeline might be better than Back to Before. I don't know. It's not a trope that I'm particularly interested in. Um, but again, like so many other things, doing it on TV, whether or not it's based on Back to Before or The Familiar, doing it on TV allows for things that are not allowed in the book, like a performance, like Shawn Ashmore doing more evil Jake, controller Jake, which again, it's a fun thing to see a character that's been established as one of the good guys, the actor doing the same character but as a bad guy. So that's fun. This episode also, since more of the characters are part of the sharing, and gets more into the more kind of religious revivalist aspects of or similarities with the sharing. Marco suddenly he's got the sweater around his shoulders like a preppy kid. Says he's cleaning up his act. So that's another kind of like alternate version of the character that's fun to see, because Marco, and again, he's a little tamped down in the show compared to how he is, but imagine the Marco of the books, the wild child Marco, and especially Rachel, the Rachel of the books, dangerous Rachel, focusing her danger, and she becomes more poison than fire, in a way more dangerous, but Marco focusing his charms, and he'd become a very useful recruiting tool for the sharing because of those charms. So that's an interesting thing that you pick up more in the show and in this alternate universe version of the show. Jake's threat to the principal. Plenty of Yeerks would love to wear the principal's hat. That's probably the line that made me realize, why would they want to wear the principal's hat when they could be one of the kids who's in charge? Like, wouldn't they rather be Jake? Even if he can't turn into a tiger, wouldn't they rather... but I guess the principal is more powerful human, even if the Yeerk Jake somehow became more powerful. I don't know. And there's more of that when Tom is kind of pushing Chapman around in Face Off Part 2, episodes 19 and 20, both parts of Face Off. Not to be confused with the movie Face Off, in which John Travolta morphs into Nicolas Cage, and Nicolas Cage morphs into John Travolta. It's similar to Animorphs, but it's not Animorphs. It's not in-universe. The alternate universe also gives Tobias an opportunity pre the change, and again, more on this in a second, to morph into something other than a hawk. And in this case, he morphs a lion. He gets the lion morph instead of Rachel. And we get a little evil Rachel, conflicted Rachel, but the actor, Brooke Nevin, I think it's Brooke Nevin. I sometimes forget some of the names. Yes, Brooke Nevin. She gets to do it instead of someone playing adult Rachel. So that's fun. And then and one more. When Jake wakes up from this alternate universe dream, whatever, he has his Dorothy back in Kansas moment, and he says, "Tobias, you're still a hawk." And Tobias responds in a kind of prickly way, but it does emphasize that it's a very kid ending. It's a very happy ending. I don't think it would have happened in the books. I think it's kind of taunting Tobias. You're still a hawk. It's like, yes, I stayed in hawk for more than 2 hours, and now I can never not be a hawk. Of course I'm still a hawk. What is wrong with you? So that just seems like it looks and sounds celebratory, but if you think about it, it's kind of mocking. So the next one, called The Release, and this one says based on the alien, and I have no idea what it ties to, but I'll get to that also. I'll get to that in a second, or probably a couple of minutes actually. So in this one, it says based on the alien. It's not really based on any of the books, it's based on the books where the Yeerks are starting to lose control of their hosts. And there's a little bit of that. They jumped the Underground, number 17, and they jumped that in line so they could make that episode 4 or 5, whichever it was, and call it The Escape. or something else, and because they'd already called another episode The Underground. Um, and where was I? These episodes where the Yeerks are starting to lose control of the hosts. It kind of gets at it's treacherous to scramble the order that things were done in the original form, in the book form, because by the time we get to Yeerks losing control of controllers in the teens of the books, another one is number 16, where one of the controllers has the one where the Yeerk has learned that if he eats other Yeerks, he doesn't have to leave his host body. So Yeerk's going crazy, Yeerk's losing control. That works better once they've been established as creepy body snatchers, but they did it right away. They opened up the Yeerk's armor right away in the Underground episode with the oatmeal, and so I just think that's just like that's the problem with jumping ahead. And the authors, K.A. Applegate, Catherine Applegate, Mike Grant, they put these things in order. They laid them out. Even with the ghostwrite written ones, it was all laid out, planned out, except maybe the back-to-back alternate universe ones that probably might not have been thought out exactly. But things happen in a certain order when they're carefully planned, and if you mess with that order, it looks a little. It's dissonant, but not in a good way. The episode also, it starts with the teacher whose Yeerk loses control of him eating a cricket because he's trying to demonstrate when you're camping, when you're out in the wild, if you're lost in the wild or camping by choice, you can eat crickets. And Rachel's reaction to that is kind of like in the episode based on The Visitor, where her dad is saying, "We're going to go for a hike. You don't have to dress nice." And she says, "Who's going to see you?" He says, "Who's going to see you? Birds and squirrels?" And she says, "Some of them might be close personal friends." Her reaction to the eating of the cricket is, that could have been one of us. And she's right. And so one wonders, I don't think it's addressed, but one wonders if realistically the Animorphs would have all automatically become vegetarians just in case. Then again, they believe themselves to be the only humans who can morph, and the only Andalite adjacent things that can morph on Earth. They find out later that's not true, but it's an interesting question. So the Yeerks in this episode, they have to spread rumors because apparently this teacher's not the only one whose Yeerk is losing control from lack of Kandrona because Cassie and Rachel beat it up, and so the Yeerks have to spread the idea that it's actually that what's wrong with the people who are exhibiting symptoms from the Yeerks losing control, which include sweats and talking to themselves and delirium. They say that it's a very contagious flu, and that that people who have the flu should be quarantined, and that makes you think too. But anyway, so let's see. There's a lot of in these things much more recklessness about the secrecy of the Animorphs than in the books. Like Jake, when Tom is going to get his Yeerk recharged, Jake runs out into the middle of the street after the van that Tom is in, yells that he knows about the Yeerks, and then as the van is pulling away, morphs into a dog to chase the van. And it's like the show, it kind of tamps down their personalities from the book, makes them all a lot more brooding and paranoid, but then it also makes them a lot more reckless, like Axe going around and the cabbie says, "Change?" He's offering Axe change, and Axe's response is, "Into what?" As though anyone, any human would think that the person was telling them to change into something else. So yeah, that's... I wrote down, why not reinfest? Because it seems like they're destroying the hosts that the Yeerks fall out of rather than reinfesting them. Don't reinfest is a command, I think, that's given. Why not reinfest? The host is still perfectly good, and you've got Yeerks that aren't dead, and they need hosts. That seems weird. And there's more of the disc. So Face Off Part 1 supposedly linked to the change. And it has two things in common with the change. Uh, obviously Tobias, or the Hawk, morphing back into Tobias's human form, and also Rachel morphing into Yeerk is what Face Off Part 2 has in common with the sickness, but you can see it's Cassie who morphs into the Yeerk, but they gave Cassie the alligator allergy, crocodile allergy, whichever, for the reaction, so maybe they just switched these, and also Rachel turning into a Yeerk makes just much less sense than Cassie. So I'll skip to the end of this episode, which is the most confusing part after having reread and now rewatching the episodes. The purpose of the disc is that it gives Tobias his human form back, and he can turn into a human now for 2 hours. It doesn't give it back to him permanently. So the disc, and it also gives Rachel the DNA for the Yeerk morph. So here's why this is one of the biggest problems. And I can forgive a lot of things for budget and time reasons, but we later see that Axe doesn't have any idea how Tobias got his morphing back. So unless this disc is one of a kind, and Alfangor made it specifically so that, because he knew that Tobias, a human, albeit with an Andalite father, would one day be in morph for too long and become a Nothlit, and would need the disc or something, so in this case the disc, to get his morphing power back, and also in the same fell swoop would need the DNA of a Yeerk so that someone could turn into a Yeerk and go into his head, or maybe he could turn into a Yeerk. It doesn't make sense that this exists at all, because again, Axe doesn't know, and Axe was in the TV timeline on the Andalite home world, or in the presence of Andalites for longer than Alfangor. In the books, they crash at the same time, but in the show, Axe crashes right before Cassie finds him. And so it doesn't make sense that this technology exists, because if this technology exists, Nothlits do not. Whenever an Andalite gets stuck in morph, they could just touch this disc thing, or the technology that fuels it, and then they get their body back. And, well, Tobias says to Rachel he can't stay in human morph for more than 2 hours. Couldn't he stay in human morph, since it's not the Elemist giving him this thing, a one-time deal in exchange for freeing the Hork, or helping the Hork-Bajir get to freedom? It's this technology that he still has access to, so couldn't he stay in human form for more than 2 hours, become permanently human, and then touch the disc again, and then he gets the morphing power back, which comes up, I think, in the books, when they get the cube back, someone says to Tobias, or Tobias says, maybe I should stay in human form for more than 2 hours, then I'm human again, I'm permanently human again, and then I touch the morphing cube, and then I get the morphing power back, I'm just like everybody else. And of course, he makes the right decision and doesn't do that. But you know, they open that up that possibility, and it makes less sense that he continues to be a Hawk permanently in the TV version than in the books, by how they, yeah. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. I've already said it's amusing to see kid Yeerks commanding adult Yeerks for kid audiences. Tom says he's going to get a big promotion for the progress he's made with the disc. The last we saw of the disc, Visser 3 was working with it, trying to open it up, and Tom's big discovery is that it's keyed to a member of Alfangor's family, and then Visser 3 says, Clan Alfangor. And I don't actually know for sure that that's not the way that the Andalites would refer to their family unit, but since, let's see, Alfangor is Alfangor Serenial Shamtul, I'm pretty sure. Axe is Aximili Esgaruth Isthel. They don't have any names in common, so I actually don't know if maybe Alfangor just got the family name, and it is Clan Alfangor, but only one every couple of generations does someone get to be named Elfangor. I don't know that. But it seemed like another... I want to read the tell-all about this series, not because I think there's any backs behind-the-scenes drama. I doubt there is, but someone from the writer's room saying why certain decisions were made, why they changed Marco's dad's name. Marco's dad probably didn't have a name by that point in the books. I don't know. I don't know if his name is mentioned in book 5 or any of the books preceding book 5 or before he learns of the Animorphs' secret. But things like the disc. Why did they do the disc? They did the disc because the disc is a convenient way to get the Animorphs to do things that they need the Animorphs to do, because they can't free a couple of those awkward Hork-Bajir puppets and have them running around. They can't do that. Or maybe it would not necessarily look great if they did that. So they have to find other ways to do things, and I get that, and the disc is convenient, but you know, what were the conversations? How involved were the authors of the books? How involved were any of the ghostwriters of the books in figuring out what to change and how to do it? Because because that disc and what it can do, it creates more questions than it answers. Let's see. Oh, it was the Super Yeerk episode. I don't know if Super Yeerks were in. Maybe Super Yeerks were from the one that took place in the Arctic, and that would make sense because one of the kind of throwaway lines is these Yeerks aren't going to survive global warming. They have to be kept at a certain temperature, and so maybe that is the Arctic. And the Yeerks have those ice monsters, which are really cool, and they have to develop the new Super Yeerks in freezing temperatures. So maybe that's that. But the Wikipedia thing doesn't say that it's based on, what is that one called? The Extreme. It doesn't say that it's based on the Extreme, so I don't know. But anyway, they're Super Yeerks, and we don't know the fate of the Super Yeerks, but I think I know because part 3 of Face Off is episode 1 of season 2, maybe not. It would make more sense if they were divided 13 and 13, and all the face-offs were in the same season. But I don't remember how it aired. Although it says how it aired, so I can just look at that. I'll just look at that right now. So, Face Off Part 2 aired March 7th, 1999, and then just under a year later, Face Off Part 3 aired. So that is how they were divided. And season 2 must have just been shortened because it got canceled in the middle. I don't know. That's why I need the book. I need the tell-all. Maybe if anyone connected, I'll write the book. I just need access to the people. Maybe I can arrange that myself. Anyway, another convenient thing, Chapman puts the disc on a windowsill so that Tobias can fly by and grab the disc and automatically be given his human body back, and so crash down to the ground and get a message from Elfangor, which also explains that even though I don't think Elfangor says this, the bit about the Yeerk DNA, but Tobias somehow knows. And I think that that does make sense because the Andalites do have that little psychic thing. I think it is in the first book, and it's in the first episode. Elfangor just, in the book he touches their heads, I think. In the book he just puts up his hand and shows them Yeerks, and shows them how Yeerks work, and gives them images to go along with what they need to know. So there's that, I guess. Sickness is tied, albeit slimly, to Face Off Part 2. I noticed that because they can't do the Hork-Bajirs, so they have humans taking people to and from the Yeerk pool all the time. They have the Hork-Bajir just standing guard at the cages, but the humans are moving the humans back and forth to the Yeerk pool, and they're much less effective than in the books when Hork-Bajir are doing it, holding people down near the Yeerk pool. And I already mentioned that, and that because I've already talked a lot about the disc, and that's where I wrote down the tell-all. The Jake acquiring Tom thing, I wasn't sure when he managed that, but again, that gets back to what I previously said about about, you know, we don't always have to see them acquiring their morphs. Jake could acquire Tom at any time. They live together, so that's actually fine. I don't know why I guess I wrote that down thinking it was a problem, but it's actually not a problem for me because even if I never find out the answer, I don't need to know. I just need it to happen. Um, and then getting back to the Yeerks being James Bond villains who leave their captives, their important prisoners, alone, giving them every chance to escape. Tom says that he didn't infest the captured Andalite, which is Jake, right away because he figured Visser 3 would want to watch. And Visser 3 is not that interested, apparently. Yeah. So it's goofy. I like it. There's a lot good about it. But the interesting thing about a video like this is not what's good about it, but what's a little bit messy. But criticized with love. Next week, in 2 parts, season 2, which is only 6 episodes long, so 3 and 3. And then I'll say what I'm going to do next. I'm actually going to put off doing this I am going to do this with Space Cases, and I'm really looking forward to that because I was looking at some trivia about Space Cases that I'll get to talk about. But there's something in between, so I'll put off Space Cases probably until November, but there will be something in October, and there will be a lot more of it than this. So, ram the blade ship.